Thank you, Rebecca. Good morning, everyone. For those of you who are online, you're probably unaware of this, but we had a member unexpectedly not show. And so, as pursuant to our rules, 4 members have to be present to achieve quorum. We put in a call in to one of our members that was supposed to be online. Hopefully, they will be able to potentially show up within a half an hour, but I don't see them online, so I'm hoping they're on their way. Um, with that said, we're going to go ahead and start the meeting. The Deputy Vice Chair, Commissioner Johnson, will start the meeting. Are you ready, Commissioner?
I'm ready.
Okay.
I had to unmute.
So I guess we can do the call to order. Is that correct, sir?
Right.
Yes.
All right. I'd like to call today's February 4th Executive Broward MPO executive meeting to order. This is our third hybrid executive committee meeting. And as Greg just told you, we don't have a quorum. So we're waiting on that. And we have a bit of housekeeping. This meeting is being recorded. Please keep your mics muted until the chair recognizes you by raising your virtual hand. And if you're not speaking, you'll be automatically muted. I assume that everybody knows at this point where to find their virtual hand. Let's see. Motions will be made with the motion. Oh, there's Beam at home.
Good
Beam
morning.
is not on his way driving in. I left you a message, sir, to see if.
Oh, I just saw that you called.
Yeah.
I figured you were saying you're late. You're late.
No, actually, I was actually hoping that I could convince you to drive up.
Oh, do you need it that bad? Do
Yeah.
we not have? We don't
No,
have
we
anybody?
don't. We don't, and I have 3 contracts that need to get approved.
Ay, ay, ay.
I can call another meeting later in the month, but you know,
I mean, I can do it.
you can, sir.
Um,
Thank you.
it'll be. I'm 25 minutes away.
Yeah, we'll occupy everybody's time with the other non-action items, if that's okay with you.
Okay.
Sir.
All right.
You're the man. Thank you.
Commissioner. Yes.
Man, oh man.
You'll save us all.
Yay.
All right. I'll see you in a little bit.
Thank you, sir. Bye.
We can always
Okay.
sing or something if we run out of things
Something,
to.
Sandy.
Oh, there. Oh, I'll sing. Hold on. Volare. Okay. No.
All right. So I do want to remind everyone we are recording this
Oh,
meeting.
that's-
So if
That's the
you
end of
intend
the
to
song.
sing, please know that everyone will hear it. So it's Madam Chair. Who doesn't have video? Ms. Stoner. Okay.
Carl.
It might just be is your video dark? Okay, so Ms.
Okay.
Johnson, if you would, we can't take any formal action.
There we go.
So if you would, we can. Got it. Well, we can go right to the Holland and Knight conference call. Who's setting that up?
That's perfect. I'm gonna. I think
Paul
Holland and
Cabaret.
Knight folks, Lori and
We're both on.
you're there. Okay.
Good morning.
Lisa.
Hey,
Morning.
hey Lisa.
morning.
Hey Lori. Good morning. Hope you guys are warm.
Ah.
It was cold in South Florida, so I can only imagine what it was like in Virginia.
Yeah, we
Maryland.
still have snow on the ground.
Yay. We have white sand, exactly.
Oh, yeah. I take that.
Okay, if you guys want to start us off, and we can
And
go
you
from
can take
there.
as long as you want.
Yeah.
Lori, do you want to go?
Sure, I can start. Good morning, everyone. I know we spoke to many of you earlier this week. I guess the only thing one thing that has happened since then is that we now have a Secretary of DOT. He was confirmed by the Senate by overwhelming majority earlier this week, and then Vice President Harris swore him in. So that's great news. And as we talked before, DOT is definitely staffed up. It's one of the few agencies that is almost fully staffed. So that's wonderful for us and our priorities. Looking ahead, they are close to having a deal on the COVID bill. And they are working through a process called budget reconciliation, as we discussed earlier, which is just a very obtuse term that means the Senate can pass a bill by a simple majority rather than 60 votes. But this is important for you because of the state and local assistance will be included in there, and hopefully some money for transportation as well. At the same time, they're also working on an infrastructure bill, and they're hoping to have that on the floor and done sometime early spring, summer. So we've been talking to Greg about making sure your priorities are included in there, and that you have the funding you need to expedite some of your projects. And then after that, we're working on the transportation authorization bill as well. And Lisa, do you want to talk about our pilot program for MPOs?
Yeah, so as you know, we finished off December 2020 with an omnibus appropriations bill. And in that report language is a version of our language that will be setting up a pilot program at USDOT to simplify the process of how the MPO receives its surface transportation block grant funding, so that the funding can come directly to the MPO versus having to first be funneled through FDOT. And there's a lot of great positives and advantageous things that this is good for the MPO at the long run. So in order to get this up and running now, we need to continue having our meetings with USDOT to talk about the intention of the pilot program, how we're going to shape it so that Broward is still at the top of the list to be part of the pilot, as well as making sure that we continue to work with our congressional delegation so that they understand, because when we do a rewrite of the reauthorization bill, we still also want our language and our idea of the pilot program to be within that surface transportation bill. So we're setting up meetings to catch up with staff, virtual meetings for later this month. Some good things that also happened this week. The Senate finally got their organizing memo done. Because of the 50-50 split, it took a lot longer than what it normally does, because the leaders had to kind of come together and have a compromise of how they saw things running. So committee assignments from the Senate just got finished this week. Senator Rubio will still be on Senate Appropriations Committee, which is great for us. He's a big help in trying to get language on the Appropriations Committee. And Senator Rick Scott remains also on the Senate Commerce Transportation Committee. So again, we're glad to see our senators stay in those spots. One new thing though, Senator Rick Scott also got on to Senate Homeland Security. So in terms of what they oversee with FEMA and issues, that is something that is good for the state of Florida.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I just want to let the members know, and we had this discussion at the board last week, I guess it was, on the pilot program too. And that was when Commissioner Karn asked the question about those communities of 5 million or more. And there's, what is there, 5 of them in total. Paul Cavarese, if you want to just jump in really quick on that one.
There's 6 of them in total. If you want to run down the list in no particular order, New York's number 1, Chicago, Houston, Florida, and I believe Philadelphia is up there.
LA.
Oh, yeah.
In Los Angeles.
Yeah.
Right.
And so the pilot, this whole idea of the pilot that the team was referring to would allow these, 6 major areas to be able to receive surface transportation and community block grant dollars directly, as opposed to flowing through the state departments of transportation. It's a good pilot to see direct allocation, which has been some of our partner agencies, whether it's the National Association of Regional Councils or the American Association of Metropolitan Planning Organizations, that basically have been trying to advocate for direct allocations to MPOs as well. We did get news from ASHTO through AMPO membership that they are now looking at direct allocations as well to MPOs, because there's some conversation for NLC and NACO that they couldn't do direct allocation to each cities because there's so many cities in the U.S. So they wanted to have some point to funnel through. So that's part of that conversation. And I believe the infrastructure bill that Lori was also referring to would have funding from what I heard from, was it from you guys? That it would potentially be formula of the infrastructure bill?
Yeah, like more STBG dollars.
So the way we get the funding through formula, it's based on population. And so, we're sitting in a pretty good position being one of the largest metropolitan areas in the country. Sorry, I wanted to add to that, and we have the time.
Yep.
So
No,
And then one more thing we're also working on with the MPO is grants are going to start to be released and notice of funding opportunities. So we had a good call with Greg and Paul yesterday and your grants team to talk about this. And we think the MPO is in a good position to apply for the grants. This administration is focusing on climate. And so Greg has identified some projects he's going to talk about later on that do deal with sea level rise. I will mitigate that, which would definitely be part of the administration's priorities. And the second priority he has is helping with environmental justice, making sure that communities that are impoverished do have the resources they need, including transportation.
So I'm going to jump in on that one, Lori, and we're going to, with Paul's group, we're going to actually be sending out a request for other projects as well. I'm aware of a few, but maybe some cities may have some more. Part of being competitive in the process is actually having a match, a local match. So I'm aware of some projects that do have local matches that can move forward, and the federal share can be, part of the total. And that's what we're going to be asking Paul. We think we're going to be sending that request out to the members. Do you remember when on your work program?
We're targeting next week,
Okay.
if not earlier.
And we're only going to give a 2-week turnaround because we need to have everything ready to submit by April. So we're going to really need that help. One of the contracts, as soon as Commissioner First shows up, is actually to engage the consultant to help us prepare the applications. So that is the most information we can get from the communities once we see that they're qualified. The faster our consultant team can put things together, and we can get them up to Lori and Lisa, vet them, potentially through the resources in DC, and get them lined up for submittal. So there's a lot going on with that. The other thing that's useful of gathering that information on our side is there are some projects that have local match but don't necessarily qualify through the discretionary grant. With the infrastructure grant coming down, or grants formula, we'd be able to look at those as well and get them into our prioritization list. So that way, if there is a formula dollar, then we can fund some of those projects as well. So you just need to think about what you have in your communities and move forward. And yes, it could even include bridges. And then Commissioner Johnson, not that you want more bridges under construction in your community, but when it comes to Plantation, you have a bridge project that I know that you desire to go forward with, and Merzietti, we have some things that we could probably work together with you as well. And then there is the possibility, I want to try to further the conversation about the trail bridge that we had a presentation during our board retreat that went over over the Sawgrass Expressway to connect the trail system to the other trail system along the levee. So there's some really good opportunities for us when it comes to that. Back over to the team, sorry.
I think we're just going to open it. Oh, Lisa, I'm sorry. Were you going to say something?
Mm-mm.
Otherwise, I was going to open it up for questions.
Does anyone have any questions?
Mayors, plural.
Anyone online? Looks like not.
Any attendees?
Right.
Madam Chair, if you don't mind, and this is atypical, not part of our agenda, but I'd like to invite Lauren Jackson from Trip Scott Erics to give an update at the state level. So far, this has proven to be an interesting session.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
Thank you.
Hi, Lauren.
Hi,
Lauren.
everyone. Hi, good morning. Yeah, so this is definitely an interesting session. It is obviously it's unprecedented in the way that we're having to give public testimony, interact with our legislators while they're here and in committee. There's also a lot of bills that are out there that we have concerns about There was one filed just yesterday that would place a 25% cap on funding certain public transportation projects. We have a meeting request in with the sponsor, and we should be meeting with him either at the end of this week or at the beginning of next week to get more details on that. There's also the Regional Planning Council bill that's in the Senate that we know is a Senate President priority that is also coming through. But there's a lot of preemptions this year that have been filed and a lot that we expect to move. Including a preemption on purchasing, Apple products, a social media attacks, and just a lot social media censorship. So attempting to control, I suppose, who they allow on their platform or not. There's just a lot of really concerning legislation out there, but we are meeting with our representatives. We are meeting with the legislators. We're able to have Zoom meetings. They can stop by our office. We're all up in Tallahassee right now. So those conversations are continuing to go. And it just happens to be a rather difficult year. And I don't know if there's anything else that you, and especially with budget wise as well. If you guys have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Mayor
do.
Stoner? I can see you raise your hand. If
Oh,
that's
okay. Yeah, don't
Madam
make
Chair.
me look at this. Hey, Lauren, how are you?
Doing well. How about you, Mayor?
Good, thanks. So when we say difficult, I'm defining difficult as basically everybody's appropriations are sort of off the table because of budget concerns from the pandemic and all of that. So is that still the consensus? Because as you've said, you all are doing Zoom and you're right there and everything. So as a result, Broward Days was canceled. But does that mean that we should still try to Zoom with everybody when they really can't do anything? I know it's like.
In terms of the budget, it is going to be a very difficult year. I don't expect a lot of member projects to be funded still.
Okay.
Even though the governor's budget was actually very great. It was very
Yes.
rosy and it included a lot of federal dollars. And I know that we really liked the governor's budget. It fully funded the work program and it allowed a lot more flexibility. And there's actually additional federal dollars that we expect might be coming that weren't even in that budget. That might even be a little bit more helpful. So in terms of that, there's maybe like a little bit of a light at the end of the tunnel, which is why we're trying to do the work that we can do for appropriations just in case there ends up to being more funding flexibility. However, the House and Senate, and particularly the Senate, has said that their budget is going to be much more conservative, that they're not going to go down that pathway because they don't want to overcommit the state to funding when the economy doesn't recover or the federal dollars don't come through, or there's strings attached to those federal dollars we don't know about, that they don't want to base a budget on that. They want to be very conservative so that next year, the hope is that by next year, they'll have a lot more funding and then they'll be able to look at member projects and entertain those again.
Right.
So that is the message that we're getting. But I know that everyone is still trying to at least put the work in just in case there ends up being some kind of federal windfall or something like that.
And personally, as I'm already starting to prepare the budget for next year. And I've been very conservative, but I am concerned about an economy adjustment here. Our city's done very well because I'm conservative, but I'm feeling like I need to tighten even more because I'm not sure where the economy is going. So, and not being able to talk to everybody in Tallahassee, would that be a similar philosophy that you're sort of getting up there?
Yes, it is definitely, certainly from House and Senate leadership.
Right.
I think that is the concern, is that we just don't know if the recovery is going to be happening, how we project it's going to happen.
Right.
Or if there's some other, issues that are festering underneath that we don't quite see yet that are going to become bigger, and that economic recovery isn't going to take place like we're hoping it will. At the same time, the revenue collections have been they've exceeded expectations.
Yes.
So far we've had some great news, but yes, to that same vein of thought of concern over economic recovery and where Florida is really going to end up at the end. That's why they don't want to really overextend in spending too much or in appropriating to member projects.
So are they talking about timing? If we don't have the vaccine, we can't distribute it. But by the same token, I've told all our folks, don't expect anything till the summer. So at least they're not out there freaking out, where's mine? But is anyone up there talking about, we think we're going to see something a little clear by fall, or, some of that speculation?
I mean, obviously they have to pass their budget before they leave, because it's the only thing they're constitutionally mandated to do is to pass the budget. So they have to work on the numbers that they have, at the time.
Gotcha.
So in terms of timeline for the budget, I mean, they're just going to have to go with that. In terms of the vaccine, I think, we're experiencing the same problems as every other state in terms of the supply being restricted, and in terms of not having all the information. The federal government doesn't even have all the information. And they've expressed how that it's really challenging to communicate the correct information to everyone when they don't even actually have it. So that's the situation that we're at with the vaccine. So in terms of timeline with that I think the hope is that we're going to be getting better information soon, and that the supply chain will finally start to open up a little bit more. And then we'll have better information that way.
All right. Well, I'm sorry I got a little off topic there, but they all sort of domino together at the end.
Sure, absolutely.
And was sort of looking for the big picture from Tallahassee viewpoint.
And I would say, even though the budget is very concerning, and they're looking at, it's a $2 billion hole that they're looking to fill. And obviously policy decisions that they make can, whether or not they have a fiscal necessarily attached to it, the policies can still benefit us funding wise or hurt us funding wise. And that's something that we're very concerned about. And we're trying to keep a close eye on, making sure that the State Transportation Trust Fund isn't swept, that the work program is fully funded. And of course that we want the funding flexibility and to stop any bills that would restrict our flexibility even further. So in terms of policy wise, and especially for local governments, there's a lot of really bad preemption bills this year, and a lot that are moving. And so I would still encourage everyone to have Zoom meetings. Every legislator is taking Zoom meetings, which is great. They've all been very accessible via Zoom. And so I would still encourage you to meet with your delegation members and also legislators and still have those conversations in terms of policy. I think that it would get you
Great.
an outcome.
I appreciate that very much. Okay, thank you.
Absolutely.
Any other questions for Lauren? Looks like not. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Have a good one.
Thank you, Lauren. Be safe.
Stay warm.
As well.
Yeah.
Mayor Stoner, I do want to add on to that because USDOT staff is basically, am I not on?
Hear you.
Mayor Stoner, I want to add to your comment on the vaccine because USDOT is not taking any in-person meetings until early September.
Okay.
So that's basically giving an indication on the federal side.
Right.
You don't expect nationally the vaccine to be at the number it needs to be until September.
Okay.
And then in that federal bill, that she was discussing earlier, the COVID relief bill, there's trillions of dollars for cities and counties, that will help cover these budget holes, including states. So, from a transportation side, the DOT budget here in the state of Florida is about $1 billion in the hole. And so we saw that in the work program approvals last week when we were doing that. But there was also an infusion of $890 million, which isn't $1 billion, but it's a good chunk into it.
Sure.
And so we're, trying to cover those holes with some of the federal side. So I think that there's great opportunities, given the current administration's, you know, just, I guess, willingness to not be bipartisan, to move some of these bills through the budget reconciliation process. So I
Okay.
think you're going to see a lot of this tie together at the state level, at the federal level, and then we just have to keep a vigilant eye on all that.
Mm-hmm.
But what Lauren mentioned, which is going to be impact to Broward County, and Clay, I see you're on as well as Angela, representing the county commissioners and county staff. The whole idea of a minimum or a maximum match for transit projects is going to be a major issue for any type of expansion of our transit systems here in
Right.
Southeast Florida.
Right.
Because right now we can actually exceed the numbers that the legislature's approving. The other thing, and Paul, reach in and correct me on the number, but the other thing that we saw in that bill was they're actually getting rid of the landscaping completely, right, Paul? How much is it? Was like 0.5% or 1%?
It was going to be the bare minimum.
Yeah.
If a
So,
weed blows onto the median, they'll count that
as landscaping.
Yeah.
So we're headed into that, conversation as well. And since all of our roadways here are pretty much built out, so it's really what we do with landscaping and, fixing the roads up, that's going to be something that the state doesn't want to use federal and state dollars on. So prepare for yourselves to have that argument as other projects move forward out of the DOT work program. That's going to be a direct impact. And Paul, what am I missing? Anything else on that?
No, if I could just give a quick update on our state legislative priorities, which the board adopted last week. I think it was last week. So as far as safety goes, just regulate distracted driving as a primary offense. There's already a bill in session to do that. That comes up every year, or changes to it. Climate change mitigation. The governor announced a $1 billion program for the state of Florida. So those are moving along. The big concerns that we have is that what the Broward MPO and really our South Florida region has asked for is flexibility in the funding. Okay, Broward's built out. So if the majority of our funding is for roadways, we want to be able to efficiently and effectively spend the money that we're given. And we can't do that without the flexibility. And what's the concern that we're seeing at the legislative level is that flexibility is already restricted and they want to tighten it even more. And we want to make sure that we can deliver a transportation system to our urban population. Really what we have in Broward is an urban population. It's not like the majority of the state, which is predominantly rural. And that's our concern. So maybe, and working through our lobbyists at TSE, is there might be a compromise on this, but we bring attention, we bring the data to them that here's the unintended effects of what's being proposed. So for instance, the bill about social media, one of them include any Amazon service. I don't know if you know this, but Amazon makes the majority of its money through web hosting. And a lot of us have data that's backed up some way through Amazon Web Services. And we may not know that. So the cost for a local government to go research who hosts their servers would be incredible. And we're just bringing this information through our lobbyists to Tallahassee so that they know the unintended consequences of what's being proposed.
Because it's kind of scary the way they're headed in the direction, and what the ultimate impact could be to all of us. We just actually don't know. And, a lot of us use social media platforms for other things. There's so many strange things going on right now. Anyway, thank you, Paul. Did you have anything else you wanted to add to that?
No, not at this time. But if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out directly to Greg and I, and we'll get right on those.
Yeah. Okay, so
Move on to discussion items now. So
exactly.
the first one will be Juneteenth, and Brian Kaleka will be speaking to us on this.
Good morning, Honorable Chair and members. Thanks for joining us today. This memo is just that our Executive Director directed our CFO to add Juneteenth as a holiday. We're kind of following on the tailcoats of some local authorities like Dade County, as well as Tamarack. And I know many other communities are considering this as a paid holiday too. There's no change in the budget because we had budgeted it as a work day. It just means that it's a paid holiday for our employees. So there was actually no additional impact to our budget, except for that the employees are not going to be productive on that day.
Well, I bet you they still work a little bit. Does anybody have any questions on that? Because that was one of those things where we were looking at conversations I had with our partners at the Miami-Dade TPO, because they adopted that as their policies too. Nice background, Brian. Thanks for sharing your office. But they actually had some conversation about what this holiday would mean. Brian, you hail from Texas, and this is kind of why it exists. I learned about the concepts and the issues with that actually from the newspaper several years back, and this is kind of ties back to Paul's conversation about, well, if we stop social media posts and doing things, a lot of information flows to our communities in very odd ways. And for 2 years to have passed since the Civil War and the Emancipation Proclamation being official, I don't know about you, but I would have been really upset. And I think that this is something that, even though it will be a paid holiday for our employees, I think it's something that I'm going to be looking to a call for service for those of us who might want to kind of consider why this should be a big deal. I can't even imagine having lived through that type of experience. Brian, it was in what city? Galveston?
Galveston, Texas.
Yeah. And which was the largest city in Texas at the time, I believe, correct?
It was one of the larger ones, yes.
Yeah. So I just can't even imagine denying people their freedom. And that just kind of speaks to the role of government and the role of how we communicate. And that's the lesson I'd like to help our team members learn, even though we'll be on a holiday, but understanding why that holiday even exists and why it's important and how its impact on other issues that we face, including on our public communication side. Brian, did you want to add anything else? And then we can take some questions.
Well, I'll just say that, I have worked with a very diverse background for my entire career. And I remember having a conversation with one of my friends that, who didn't celebrate Christmas, for instance. And he said, I love Christmas. And I said, oh, really? Why? He's like, it's still a time, even though we're not from where we are from, it's still a time when we can get together with our friends and our families. So it's still a good time for us, even though we don't, recognize it as our holiday. And this is kind of the same thing. We didn't want to substitute a different holiday, say take away President's Day in order for this, because we didn't want to try to draw up which has more significance. It's supposed to be, this is an important date in our history, and it should be celebrated and it should be respected, just like all the other holidays.
The reverence. Any questions, members?
So if I might, Deputy Vice Chair Johnson, we have in our room, we never really announced who's present in our room today. At Small Municipalities, Representative Ziotti, who's a new member who's joined us today, and at-large Representative Stoner as well. This is their first meeting. Sorry that we're having a little hiccup with today's meeting, but it happens, and you'll get to see us at our best when that occurs. Also, virtually, we have Vice Chair Patty Good, who's virtually attending. I haven't seen or been watching to see if she had raised her hand to speak at all, but Ms. Good, welcome. We have Commissioner Furr. He is on his way. We got a call that he is moments away, so we will be officially able to start the meeting at that point in time.
Well, he's crawling along Oakland Park, 95 and Oakland Park Boulevard. So
you're
Yeah.
muted.
Is he on his way by way of the Tri-Rail?
I
No.
wish. That would have actually taken longer, but
Oh,
unfortunately,
don't say that. Don't
it's,
say
well,
that.
if they were on 15-minute headways, maybe, but you
Right.
know, maybe one day. But he is driving, and he is stuck in a little bit of traffic. He says it's moving slowly by Oakland Park, and then the next exit is commercial, and then it's us. So, you know, with a little bit of luck, he'll be here, and you know, we appreciate your time with that. Then we're going to move on to the next item. Mr. Cavarese and Mr. Cromar, you want to go ahead and present the Sunrise Mobility Hub update?
Yes.
Hold on a second, Paul. Before we get started, this is James Cromar with the Broward MPO. One of the reasons to share this information was also to let our county commissioner be aware. So I just want to raise that question. If Commissioner Furr is not yet there, do we want to still go ahead with this item right now or fill in the
Oh, James, I mean, life
Yeah.
is what it is.
Okay, all right.
This is recorded. We can provide him the minute from.
And I hope maybe he'll walk in as we're in the middle of it. So,
And his aide is on as well as county staff.
yeah, okay.
So, James, if I'm going to share my screen, but while I'm setting that up, if you'd like to frame the Mobility Hub program as a whole.
All right. Broward MPO has identified mobility hubs as a transit access point with frequency of transit and development or redevelopment opportunities. We've been advancing mobility hubs over the last 10 years. It was one of the items that we identified in the 2035 LRTP. We'll gladly come back and give more updates on some of the other hubs, but we are currently nearing completion of the construction of the first mobility hub in downtown Fort Lauderdale, which is around the Brightline, Broward County Transit Transfer Facility around Andrews and Broward. We are advancing work on a mobility hub at State Road 7 and Hollywood Boulevard in the city of Hollywood. And then in the next few meetings, you'll be getting information about Pembroke Pines at the city center location where we've completed a mobility hub master plan, and we'll be looking to do physical improvements there. The staff has also been working with other communities to develop mobility hub master plans. Mayor Stoner, we worked with the city of Plantation. We're finishing up something with the city of Coral Springs. And then the third one we want to talk about is Sunrise, which we ended up focusing in the west area of Sunrise around Sawgrass Mills, Corporate Park area. Paul, do you want to take it from there then?
Thank you for framing larger context, James. So yeah, as James said, we pretty much focused on the Sawgrass Corporate Park area, and we had these goals in mind, or points to study. Okay, looking at safety, okay, increased usability of our multimodal network, activating the public realm. Okay, and we also wanted to align with our local priorities. This area has been studied to death, and we're going to get into that later. We compiled results from at least a dozen studies to drive our work forward. Okay, and when as we're looking at the long term, because yes, we do have money now, but we want to make sure that this fits the long-term vision of this area. Okay, and here's our overall master plan process, and you might have seen this a couple of times, and it's generally what we use for all of our mobility hubs. The only difference in this one is that this included, at the city's request, an AV shuttle assessment. So here on the left side is all of our planning, our framework, our research, and then that leads us to develop our recommendations, and that led to a final master plan. All right, so for the AV shuttle assessment, looked at possible routing, linking attractors and generators, so where people are with where they want to go, and also exploring current AV shuttles. Now, we ran into a problem with this, is that the max speed for the automated vehicles is 35 miles per hour. In order for them to operate on state roads, they must at least be able to make the speed limit posted on that state road. So for instance, Sunrise Boulevard has a posted speed limit of 40 miles per hour. So we could not drive down, or the automated vehicle could not drive down Sunrise. And that greatly affected our routing options. And then in order to make the lead times available, so ideally 10 minutes in between shuttles coming for a lunch crowd, it was just very cost prohibitive. Okay. So once again, I said this area had been studied to death. These are the list of studies and plans that we looked at to compile information just for this one area. Okay. And additionally, we did new research. Okay. What does the transportation of the ridership look like? You can see in the center at the Sawgrass area, at the current stop, it's the highest used one in the area and one of the highest used in the county. We also explored the pedestrian and bike network, where the connectivity, looking at if we could create any connections between these areas. And really, even though it's large and you see a lot of development, they almost act as a series of islands, with the mall being its own island, the corporate park being its own, et cetera. So each parcel almost operates as an independent island. But there are connections to them, they're just not at the human scale. And then lastly, we looked at development. So we're going to do this investment, we're going to look at something long-term. Well, where's the ideal area for this? And we were looking at, well, what's known? What's going to happen? And actually, this is almost out of date, because looking at the Metropica area, at the time, it was ready to go and it was really moving forward. But even in the time since we've done the study and through the pandemic, it's pretty much stalled. So anything in green was going to happen, anything in yellow is going to happen in the next few years, and anything in red, we know something's going to happen in these areas, we just don't know what that is. So it's very hard to plan around something that we just don't know. And as a result of these, we really started honing in on the Sawgrass Mills area. And that happened through our stakeholder outreach. We met with City of Sunrise multiple times, FDOT, Sawgrass Mills management, who were very amenable and very open to new ideas on their property. And we met with several departments within Broward County. Okay, planning, engineering, their real estate division, and several times with Broward County Transit. And then additionally, we
Hold on, Paul. We are now achieving quorum too. That sounds
Yes,
great, sir.
Commissioner Furr has just entered the building. If you would make sure he's on. So,
Whoops.
And Carl will help you turn a tune on if. Madam Chair, if you mind, we're gonna just let Paul finish up this presentation, and then we'll go back to the, if we can,
Okay.
the action items. Okay.
but for the record, Commissioner Furr is in the audience now. He's part of the meeting, and it's 10:14.
We have achieved quorum, so thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Okay. Paul, continue.
Thank you, Mr. Gabriel. So honing in on the bus stop at the Sawgrass Mills Mall, it is used 50% for people who work there, another 26% for transfers, and the remaining are shopping, or actually people use it they get off at Sawgrass Mills and then walk to other parts around the area. But it's used very much. That's why we honed in on it. And looking at the current facility, it's a bus stop, but it's not really a hub. You can see the buses queue in the fire exit. There's not a lot of amenities for people who wait there. There is a food court, but it's still not close enough. And you could even see, if you go on Google Maps, you can see the buses queued up sometimes 2-3 deep. So we looked at examples of transit hubs around the country and around the state of what could this turn into, and we have some illustrative examples. Okay, I believe the one on top is the proposal for the Lauderhill transfer area. Okay. And we combined that with our mobility hub elements and our placemaking, and we really tried to determine what could we make. Okay, and then lastly, the reason we really honed in on that is there's also, when we looked at our studies and everything, that was the gap. There's a lot of commitments in this area to improve the public infrastructure. Okay, even talking to the developer of Metropica, they are legally obliged to provide transit facilities and other additional upgrades. And would they want the MPO to pay for those? They sure would. but that's not the highest and best use of our public funds. All right. So working through our consultants and with staff members at Broward County Transit, we came up with a couple of bus stop designs. And I'm just going to show you two of them for illustrative purposes, but they're to serve the purpose of housing more buses and making it safer for pedestrians to cross. This parcel of land was actually offered up by Sawgrass Mills Mall management, and they said that we could use this, convert this parking lot into a better facility. All right, and here's another one, multi-directional, holds 11 buses. Okay, and we came with some renderings of what this would look like in the area, and it got very good praise from Sawgrass Mills Mall. When we ultimately brought this to BCT, who they did a site visit, they said it'd probably work. They said that in the end, this didn't meet their long-term vision for the area. So at this point, the project is completed. We're not moving forward with any of the designs, and our report's been finalized, and that's what we wanted to bring to you today. It's just because we presented this to the executive committee last year. We just wanted to bring this full circle and tell you how it's concluded.
So with the conclusion, Paul, I'm going to step in for a second before you do questions. With the conclusion of this, basically the county has moved forward with purchasing a hotel site in the Sawgrass Mills area, and in brief conversation with the transit operator director, I guess it's director of transportation now, I'm not exactly sure. His desire was to move forward with a different type of project, and he is interested in us investing some federal funds that we have into that project, but he doesn't know when he's going to be doing that project. So, concluding this, it's always a shame when your partner ultimately doesn't move forward. And we've had multiple occasions where that's happened, with us. But, we are looking for other locations, and that money, thankfully, and James, you can speak to this, does move from that location to others as we continue to focus down on mobility hub improvements over the next 5 years. James, did you want to add anything before we go to questions?
No, I think you're good between what both of you have said. The BCT partner said that the location that Paul talked about didn't meet their current needs. They're looking at longer term options that will address some of the premium transit needs along with the bus needs for the future. And so we just asked them to keep us in the loop as they develop more information. We can work with them and look at the funding that we have available and how it could be helpful.
And they can apply at that time. I mean, that's the other thing. Questions, members? Mayor Stoner. Mike.
Yep. So I recently sort of drove around the Lauderhill stop. Is that their desired design versus just sort of adapting an access lane in the mall? Because it's a, larger facility by every means. So what is their goal?
And Mayor, if I could clarify, are you asking their goal for the Sawgrass Sunrise area?
No, just generally what they're looking at. So, you've got a temporary fix at Sawgrass, but it's not what they consider long-term. Yeah. And so it's night and day between the Sawgrass rendering and what we have in Lauderhill. So is Lauderhill more of the prototype of what we're looking for?
So
through the chair, Commissioner Furr.
Yeah. Well, I know that the county is looking at a robust situation over Sawgrass Mills. There's an entire study going on, looking at all the arterials and what's the best thing to happen there. There's a lot of study going on, so right. But I don't think it's going to be just what it is now. It's not going to be that. And Lauderdale is a combination of a bus maintenance facility as well. If we're talking about the same one.
Gotcha.
Okay. So that one's where they get recharged, they get all kind of stuff.
Okay.
I don't think that's going to happen out there. but I do think you're going to be seeing some pretty big plans coming out there.
Gotcha.
So, Greg, if you could send this to me,
Sure.
and then let me have some discussions with Chris and see where it's at right now.
Absolutely, sir.
And I'm happy to do that. But I mean that's a key element. We
Right.
because we know we're trying to get people from the port
Yes,
all the way out there,
I know.
and lots of buses, or whatever, who knows
Mhm.
whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a matter of trying to figure out the whole and it's going to it'll probably need to be a pretty big piece of land or whatever.
Right.
How big was that land that they on the Sawgrass Mills site? Anybody know?
Paul,
Um,
the Sawgrass Mills people were willing to fork over for.
Was that in the middle? Was that like right in the middle of their parking lot?
It was adjacent to.
it backed up to the Marshalls. I forgot how many acres it was, but at the most we were able to accommodate 11 bus bays.
Okay.
Mm.
Can you find out what the square footage is? Not
Yes.
not right now, but later. And just send it to me, and then we can have a discussion at the county level.
I'll have it for you in 2 minutes.
Okay, because this is this is absolutely one of the highest priorities of
Yeah.
trying to figure this part out.
Okay.
And if I could, while Paul is doing his calculations, if I could throw in some other elements that Mayor Stoner asked about. I do know that at Lauderhill, BCT had some issues with ADA accessibility with the existing facility. So there are certain standards that they need to meet for the future. So that was one of the goals with Lauderhill Mall. There's also issues at the existing stop at Sawgrass Mills where the buses just stop in a traffic lane.
Yeah.
And so there's safety concerns about having the vehicles in a location where it would not cause conflicts with automobile movement and pedestrian movements and crossings and things of that sort. And then as Commissioner Furr was referring to, there's planning for the long term for the transit outreach to the Sawgrass Mills Sunrise area. So we don't know what those elements will be. It could be something beyond bus too. And so it's just to be able to accommodate what the future is for.
And there's lots of conversations going on with Sunrise because of
sure,
different land that's owned between the BB&T, what's happening with that. There's just a lot of moving pieces. So it's
well, and this brings to mind for me the can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. How this fits in with the shuttle and that we're trying to do through the surtax and everything. But it's interesting in looking at the transition requirements. ADA only requires 36 inches wide, but if we go into any of our commercial stuff, every transition is 42 inches wide. Why haven't we changed our requirements now before everything's built?
when you're saying our requirements, who are you?
Everything that the surtax has put out about, their own specifications for slabs and foundations and everything shows the transition has to be the 36 inches per them. But I'm saying we should exceed because 36 inches is nothing. Now, 6 inches doesn't sound like a whole lot more, but it is when we get into those transitions, in my opinion. And so in our city, at least, we are going to expand beyond the required. And again, that's sort of for our long haul.
Okay.
So, all right. Thank you.
Through the chair, Mayor Zayati.
You're not on.
Through the chair, Mayor Zayati, you have your hand up?
Yes, I did. Can you hear me
I didn't
now?
even see it.
Yes? Okay. How far is the park and ride within this parking lot? I know that there's a park and ride located in Sawgrass or the
Paul,
arena over there.
Paul, could you call up the map and then it might be easier to point that out. And as he's calling it up, Mayor, the park and ride, we looked at the park and ride and the local bus transit transfer center and determined that those were serving two different markets. We talked about, would it make sense to bring those together? And it may make sense in the longer term with what the county's looking at. But for now, the park and ride was for the regional trips that were going down to Miami, and there was service to downtown Fort Lauderdale, but it's people who were arriving by car and then making that regional trip. Whereas at the mall stop, it was a lot of local trips of employees. Paul got the statistics on people who are transferring to other things. And so there was talk about combining them. It may make sense in the longer term, but for now, the decision was to look at keeping the two facilities separate. But it might change. So Paul, you can show where the park and ride is there.
So the current bus stop is this large black star. The park and ride is here, this car,
Okay.
which is on there. So it's, as the crow flies, it's not very far, but there's not any direct connections. There's minimal crossing across 136, and it's through a parking lot, down a road, across a sidewalk, and they are close, but they are not connected.
Right. I'm just thinking because the east-west corridor going downtown, if that's what people are doing, I mean,
Yeah.
I work downtown and I know that I would appreciate I used to work downtown, I should say. And so that would make sense to me to include or incorporate it somehow with that.
Very good point.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it does make sense. Why not? And, you know, we're always encouraged to combine projects because you can, I don't want to use the word sell, but you can negotiate a little better when you do have that combination of two projects that will benefit two separate things. Exactly. Exactly. So that's just, you know, my opinion as far as, you know, that it should be closer. I mean, you've got a huge piece of land in between, it looks like. So anyway, that's my 2 cents.
And if I could throw in also, one of the nice things about the buses, even if there was to be a central location closer to the existing BB&T center, they could still circulate over to the mall entrance there. You know, the idea is to provide close service for the people who are using the transit to get to the mall. But again, yeah, making sure that the buses can go on the different roadways and such. And the Sawgrass Mills people have been very supportive of that transit connectivity.
And just another point too, Paul. Just another point, and Commissioner Furr, it's 1.1 acres, the site, so you're aware. Thank you, Paul, for that information. Back to the chair, and also, yeah, we have quorum and we're back, and also Vice Chair Good is on, and I don't know if she wants to take over from her car, or she would like for you to continue to lead. But we're gonna start at the beginning and get our call to order and regular items moving.
All right. Whoops.
Can I just, I'm sorry. You can proceed as you, yes, I'm sorry. I am in my car, but not driving. I'm literally parked in front of my parents' house, and I appreciate everybody's, you know, care. My dad had a reaction to the COVID vaccine. He's extremely weak. He's doing better, but we're still have some challenges. So please, if you can continue, I will, in case I have to step away, and I will just allow Ms. Johnson, Commissioner Johnson, to take over. Thank you.
Ms. Good, if you need to get our attention, *9 will give us a virtual hand so we would see that you're interested in talking.
But I'm watching your photo on the thing too. You can just go like this.
Yeah. Ms. Johnson, if you would, continuing on our regular items, it would be item number 3, approval of minutes. We can start our regular work with public comments after that.
So we will go on to the approval of minutes, and we need a motion and second. If everybody here has read them and doesn't have any changes.
So if you,
I'll move it. School board member Good.
All right, and then I have a hand from Mayor Ziade, so for a second. So if we're going to use the unanimous consent to approve this, and so if there's anybody opposed, raise your virtual hand. Seeing none opposed, motion passes unanimously. Next, we need an approval of our agenda.
So moved.
Okay. Mayor, I
So
want to
moved.
call you
Furr.
Mayor Furr, Commissioner Furr.
Commissioner.
Made the motion, and Mayor Ziade seconded it. And is there anyone that's opposed? Raise your virtual hand. If not, Motion passes unanimously. As of the beginning of the meeting, there were no public comments received prior to the meeting, so.
Anyone else
there are any.
in the audience that wishes to
Is-
comment, make comments? Seeing none.
Seeing none, we can move on to our action items. All right, first one is a motion to approve a First Amendment to the agreement between the Broward Metropolitan Planning Organization and Acro Service Corporation for provision of finance positions on a temporary basis in an amount of $45,968 for a total not to exceed $75,968.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Is there any questions about that? No?
Yes, I have my hand raised.
School board member Good.
Oh, I didn't see that. I'm sorry. I was looking down at the agenda. Okay, yes, school board Good, member Good.
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. So I had asked for the original agreement just to understand what the original obligation was with the agreement and why the need for the additional $40,000, like what exactly has transpired differently. And so the item didn't really speak too much about that. I just wondered if somebody can quickly state why the reason for the additional 40,000.
Through the chair, I'd
Good
like to
morning.
introduce Valita.
Good morning. This is Valita Williams. How you guys doing? Now, we currently have temporary staffing through ACRO, and we're recruiting to fill the HR manager's position. And as you know, the HR manager's position is very critical to our agency. So we're simply asking that we continue to use ACRO while we are actually recruiting the HR manager to fill the HR manager's position. So this is just a continuation of the original agreement.
Yes, but the original agreement does not expire till December of this year. So there's no, so the issue is not an issue of time. So that's why I was concerned. If the agreement was ending now, I can understand additional funding required to get us through the remaining months of the year. But the agreement, doesn't it go through December?
It actually does, but only $40,000 was applied to that originally. So we have now exhausted the $30,000. So we're asking for the additional $45,000 that would take us through actually funding that agreement actually through June. So it's not an issue of the timing, it's an issue of the funding. Again, we are actually recruiting for that position, but we need additional funds to actually pay ACRO.
Okay, I guess maybe I'm not asking it correctly. So there was an expectation of funds required to get us through until, I guess, we hired someone. You said it's an HR position?
Exactly. And the $30,000 only took us through for 4 months. It took us through December. Now we still
and why, and so you need to pause. So why is that? If the agreement was for a period of time going through December, why is it that all the funds were used within just a short period of time?
It's good if I can address it. Maybe I can help explain it a little bit. So these are for actual positions. So the first ACRO agreement, the initial agreement, was for a set position that we were able to secure, and we were successful with that. After time, we determined that there was a need for an HR person, which is the set amount that we're now asking for. So this amount will cover that HR position and securing that person for that position.
Until we hire a permanent position.
And if we come forward and need another another position, we'll have to come back and ask for additional funding if we use ACRO for that.
So the initial funds were used for other positions other than HR. Is that it?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, because the item speaks to finance positions.
Yes, that was the original contract. The original contract was for a finance position, and then the need now though is going to HR.
I'm actually going to use if you don't mind, school board member Good. Valita came to us through a similar mechanism. And then we went to the employment agency and said, we'd like to hire this person full time. So
So,
that's,
no, I can understand. So it's okay then that the agreement is specifically for finance and we're using it for HR?
Yes, it's just the title of the agreement.
Yes, that's just the title of the position, because actually HR falls under fiscal services. So that's just a matter of the title. It is part of the fiscal services division of the MPO. And that person also will have some accounting function. So it's not just the HR, but it's also some finance also.
likely payroll.
Okay, so
Yes,
can
exactly, payroll.
can the executive board just get follow up on what positions are funded through this contract?
Sure.
And then the other point I wanted to make is you said you advertised the position already for HR?
Yes, we are actively recruiting for that position. We are looking at maybe a direct hire. So we're looking at all avenues to fill that position right now. And yes, we are.
So has it been advertised?
It has not actually advertised yet, but it will advertise tomorrow. It's with Mike right now. Actually, he is actually reviewing the advertisement. So it's scheduled to go out on tomorrow.
And we'll be advertising
But
it
we
via
have
Glassdoor.
contacted staffing agencies and actually recruited, asked for resumes to fill that position already.
So if the position is filled within a short period of time, we may not even need the entire amount of money that is being allocated today, correct?
Exactly.
Okay.
I'm hoping to have that position filled by the end of March. The 45,000 takes us through June. So I anticipate we will not need that amount. Correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
All right, Commissioner Fur, did you have your hand up?
I was just I made a motion to approve.
Okay, so if there's no further discussion.
Need a second?
We need a second.
Mayor Zayati.
Mayor Zayati second it. And is there any opposition to this? All right, then motion passes unanimously. We'll move on to our second motion to approve a second amendment to agreement between the Broward Metropolitan Planning Organization and Daruma Tech LLC for website hosting, support, and maintenance. Any questions on this one? If not, then we can have a motion to approve. In a second. Okay, Mayor Zayati made the motion to approve and Commissioner Fur seconded it. We'll have an unanimous consent. Anybody opposed, raise your virtual hand. No opposition, so motion passes unanimously. Third, motion to approve GPC Task Work Order number 15 between the Broward Metropolitan Organization and TY Lin International, Inc. for 2020-2021 grant applications on call. Any questions on that for Mr. Cavarese? There's no questions, then we could have a motion to approve in a second. Commissioner Fur made the motion and Mayor Zayati made the second. If anyone's opposed, raise your virtual hand. See none raised, motion passes unanimously. So that takes care of our voting. I guess we go back to the discussion items to review and discussion of future agendas.
Through the chair, I just want to thank everybody for the motions and approval of the action items. Our HR function is super important to the organization, and so was the Daruma Tech. Daruma Tech is our web service, to keep our website up and running. And the GPC goes to the earlier conversation about submitting for federal discretionary. So this is the consultant we were referring to. So thank you for all of that. And I'm going to turn it over to our attorney for review and discussion of future agendas. And he's going to say there's nothing. That's why I'm doing it to you.
Yes, we We have no items for at this
There we
moment to discuss for future agendas. So, Mr. Greg,
That
I'll
was
take
easy.
it back
I
to
like
you.
I just want to, we used to get some of the members that would request to have action items here at the executive, and it's slowed down, which is a good thing. And I want to thank everybody for showing up today and carrying those action items forward, because those are going to be very important to the organization for our operations side of things. Non-agenda items, I actually want to let you all know through Mayor Ortis that we've been, as I said at the last week's board meeting, we're trying to limit the number of actual MPO board meetings until the vaccine is readily available and we've reached herd immunity. So we're going to be doing several workshops that will be virtual, meeting the state requirements, and holding our executives for contract work. Right now, we're looking good for the month of March. As far as having an executive, it should be fairly quick. And that should also be April and May. So our next actual MPO board meeting will not likely be till June. So that's one of the reasons why I wanted to make sure that we took care of the Second Amendment to the
Right.
to that. So I think we're in good shape, and I really want to thank everybody for their participation. And you guys,
Greg, so no executive meeting in March?
that's where we're trying to get to. Yeah.
Okay.
So you'll provide notice to all of us?
We will
schedule?
notify you as soon as we know. Actually, it'll come from Brian. So,
Okay. All right.
All right. So is there anybody have anything they want to discuss before we finish up?
And I just want to thank Sandy for doing a fabulous job, and
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. Well,
Hope your
take good
dad's
care of your
okay.
dad. That's
Yeah, I hope
important.
your dad's okay, Patty.
Yeah.
Thank you, and
absolutely.
thank you, Beam, for coming over and making quorum. I appreciate everybody's efforts. I'm very, very sorry.
No
No
worries.
problem.
No
Don't be
worries.
sorry.
Take care of family.
Yeah, family first. Okay, everybody, thank you. I guess
We need to have a motion to adjourn now.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
10:45.
Bye.
Thank you.
Adjourned.
All right.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Beam, for beaming yourself.
Thank you.